I think we can start. I would like to greet you warmly, first of all. We have Mr. Cem Kozlu and Yüksel Yıldırım, who are dear colleagues and friends to me. We are going to discuss something entirely different. The title of this session is going to be Time for Renunciation. What are we going to renounce and for what are going to be the questions we will answer? First, probably I should describe why we chose this title. To answer that question, we need to remember how extraordinary the circumstances we are living in are. For a really long time, we had some unreal agenda, politically challenging events have unfolded. When we go back a little, as it was mentioned in previous sessions, in 2014 we had two elections. In 2015 also we would have one election, but two happened. After the second election, at a time when we thought things were going to normalize, right in the early days of 2016 and through the end of 2015, there was this case with Russia where there was a downed plane. Geopolitical issues continue to go rampant. Explosions and suicide bombings, all kinds of extraordinary atrocities happened in 2016. Abroad also we saw some really extraordinary happenings. The Fed interest rate policies, Brexit, the rise of Trump, everything really influenced us, although they were not even happening in Turkey. I mean, the environment was extraordinary. Well, as if we badly needed an attempted coup, even that happened to complete the picture, and there were some economic consequences. For example, the rating that we claimed in 19 years was lost in 3 years. In about 1993, we had lost our status of being a country suitable for investment. Later, we gathered it and regained our status, but in 3 years, we lost it back. Then the dollar exchange rate increased fiercely. All of these kind of make it a grim picture for us. Maybe we should use an anecdote to cheer up. Yaşar Kemal, our recently deceased author, told it to me. Back in the day, there were these petition writers waiting outside courthouses. They had typewriters, and they would write your petitions for the court. There was this citizen that visited one of these petition writers. He told this situation, and the petition writer tells him to go away for a while, and in an hour he would have his petition ready. The man comes back, and the petition writer reads what he has written. After a while, the man cries. He asks, "Why are you crying?" The man says, "Wow, I didn't even realize I had undergone so many troubles." And in our country, I think this is kind of the same thing we have been experiencing. All of this is not even normal. None of it is normal. We will talk about managing these tough times, and after all of these troubles, although we wouldn't probably expect it, we are still here. We are still doing our businesses. Our system still works despite everything. This is not easy, but great. I told you that Time for Renunciation is the title of the session. As we are living in extraordinary times, the companies and institutions in this country should also adopt extraordinary management approaches to overcome the difficulties. In normal times, you may be concerned mainly about maximizing your profits, and you would succeed. You would even benefit the economy. There would be losers too, but you would benefit the economy. Without a systemic risk being present, you would enjoy an environment of welfare. But in extraordinary circumstances, if your only concern is your own interest, probably you would gain in the short run, but in the long run, you would disturb the health, the balance of the ecosystem, and the boomerang is going to hit you in the end. Therefore, from supplier relations to finance to value chain to clients to finance, we need an approach of renunciation. This is probably a great solution in the mid and the long run without harming interests of shareholders. This is why the title is Time for Renunciation. What we mean by that is
Sadece
What we mean by that is indeed working for the well-being of the society, not only for our personal interest. And it is the same thing for the banking sector as well. So all of those loan initiatives or loan restructuring initiatives should be done by also taking into consideration the needs of your addressees. I mean, please do not misunderstand my words as a populism. I don't make any differentiation between what is right and what is wrong, but you should do your business in an expert manner, and you should indeed be tolerant from time to time, and you should make some compromises in order to work for the good of the society. And as the bank, I believe we took some necessary precautions, but I don't want to speak about my own bank because this is a topic of another session maybe. But with such policies, in a country in which the capital is not sufficient, the harsh decisions of the banks will definitely hamper the sector, and we should not let the sector to the impatient decisions of the banks. As a banker, I would like to give you a simple example. Let's assume that your customer is not able to pay, and if the guarantees are sold, then you will cover all of your expenses. You can choose for that option. This is not requiring an expertise, but indeed you should be tolerant so that you should try to exert a certain level of effort rather than selling the guarantees of your customer, but you should try to save your customer if possible. Let me give you another example. In 2009, just after the global crisis, there was a narrowing by 2 digits in our national economy. At that time, over 10,000 of our customers with their credit value over 10 billions, we have restructured them. But over 80% of those debts were paid back to us, and we saved those companies. And this is what I mean when I say creating additional value for the system. The easy path might be chosen by anyone, but it will not serve to the whole community. With your permission, in this session, I would like to yield the floor first to Mr. Cem Kozlu. In the political life, in the economic life, and in your professional life, and also with the inspiring books that you have wrote, I believe you have experienced all of what I've said so far. I know that these are the issues that all of us indeed experienced so far. And as the citizens, we are not here to share the welfare and the luxury of this country, but we also have to share the troubles and the burdens of our country. Thank you very much. I would like to extend my gratitude to each and all of you. As I was listening to your speech, I was thinking at the same time, and I was thinking how you were going to position me. But as far as I can understand, you positioned me in a place of a man who fell down from the roof. You actually provided us a good macroeconomic picture, but I really would like to speak on the micro level. Let's go back to 1990s. In the 1990s, the Gulf crisis emerged and the Gulf War took place in 1991. After the war, 37 days of strike took place, and in the 1994 and 1995, the Asian economic crisis took place, and in 1997, the Russian crisis indeed took place. In 1994, the devaluation crisis of the Turkish lira took place during the Chiller's term. In 2000 and 2001, we have the global economic crisis and its impacts were felt in Turkey. And then in 2009, we have the global financial crisis. And the Turkish Airlines had a huge liquidity problem. The Turkish Airlines was not able to pay the salaries of their employees, and also they had a huge challenge in terms of buying the oil for their planes to function. And the same union, we sat together with the union president, trade union president at that time, and we came to a consensus. And the labor union decided on a 10% of discount on the salaries for 3 months. We are speaking about the renunciation, and the renunciation means indeed giving up from one of your rights, and it is not something easy to do. The labor union decided on the reduction on the salaries by 10% for 3 consecutive months, and they accepted the delay of the premium and the bonuses to be paid when the normalization take place. And we also accepted that we will not sack any person because of the economic crisis. And this consensus gave us the opportunity to overcome these 3 months because all of our employees saved their jobs, and we were able to buy the oils and the petroleum which would indeed run our planes. This was quite an important example for the renunciation. And thank to God, after that, we were not in need of such a renunciation. We have listened to the speech of our Minister of Transportation and Communication. The minister indeed gave us the figures and statistics. After such a harsh economic crisis in 2001, the Turkish aviation sector indeed wrote a success story. That's what I would like to share in my first round, and if we have a second round, then I would like to continue with whether this is the issue of renunciation or a self-devotion and sacrifice. In such times, of course, people are chasing their dreams even in such harsh times. there are such people who are resisting and showing resilience to such harsh times, just like a wave breaker, and they are trying to benefit from those harsh times. Right now, I would like to yield the floor to Mr. Yüksel, the other speaker. With the Eczacıbaşı Group, before the economic crisis in 2001, we took part in the Canyon project by 50% of shares on each of us. It was indeed a hybrid project. There was this shopping mall and there was the places allocated for the business offices. And in 2001, the economic crisis emerged, and these two groups shook hands by applying to the rules which was written on a piece of paper, and we overcame such harsh times, and you can see our masterpiece in the district of Levent. So we should not be demotivated by the economic crisis, because the time of the economic crisis indeed are the times for the opportunities if you can think on the long term. In 2015 and 2016, Yüksel Bey made many acquisitions in the places that you cannot even imagine, so he would be contributing to the session, I presume. Thank you very much. Good afternoon to everyone. As I was invited to this panel by Mr. Adnan, I thought a lot. I thought whether I should be present in such a session or not, because, I am investing without hesitation in the markets. The topic of the session was the time for renunciation, and why it is the time for renunciation, we should indeed question that. Mr. Adnan indeed made a good summary. Last year, as we were sitting in here, there was no issue of Brexit, and if last year we were speaking that Donald Trump would be selected as the president, everybody was going to laugh at us, and we are still living with that shock. And 15th of July, the failed military coup attempt, if you were saying back then that such a military coup attempt would take place, nobody would believe you. If we had said that the Turkish army would go on an operation on Syria, nobody would believe us. The topic of this session is quite good, as I believe. In such harsh times, I also believe we should think what kind of a sacrifice we can make for the national economy. You might easily remember Kennedy, the president of the USA, said that what matters is not what the country does for me, but what matters is what I did for my country. So I believe we are at times in which we have to double our efforts and contribute to our national economy by 200% or 300%. Before the Gezi Park protests, the people were indeed lining up in queues in order to invest in our country. And then, during the winter times, I was in London, and in this week I was in Geneva. And unfortunately, the perception about the Turkey is quite bad. And in our presentations, half of our presentations are allocated for explaining what is going on in Turkey. Nobody wants to come to Turkey, and there is no one that can help us other than the Turkish people. So we should indeed know and appreciate the importance of people like Adnan, Mr. Adnan, because the banks right now are indeed sacrificing a lot in order to revitalizing the Turkish economy. And we shouldn't abuse the risks that the banks are taking, and we should do our best in order to improve the economy. As Mr. John said, the Turkish economy have gone through many economic crises. Starting from 1994, we can say that every 4 years there was a crisis in the Turkish economy. But right now, the Turkish economy is at the top 16 economies in the globe. And we have a target to be one of the top 10 economies in 2023. This is an assertive goal, this is an ambitious goal, but with the capital, I believe we will be able to realize it. But if we don't have the capital coming from abroad, then this goal will be unreal. Hopefully, the statesmen and the government representatives would also contribute in terms of the sacrifice that the business world is doing right now. I believe at least the statesmen and the government representatives should work on increasing the credit ratings. All of the ministers are saying that we are ignoring the rating institutions. They are saying that we are not taking it seriously. No matter whether you are taking it seriously or not, the foreign countries are taking those credit ratings seriously, and this is affecting our markets. And unfortunately, this leads us to huge troubles. So if we are losing what we earn, and if we cannot convert them into the investment, then it requires a good cooperation and collaboration between the businessmen, because we renounced a lot. We made huge sacrifices. Let me give you an example. When the Justice and Development Party was elected in 2002 and in 2003, many the public enterprises didn't have capital to even pay the salaries to the wages of the people. And at that time, I'm speaking on behalf of the business world, we received credits and loans from the banks, and we bought the bankrupt public enterprises so that the public economy improved. And the government, the state, actually paid its $70 billion of its debt to the IMF, and right now they are boasting about giving $5 billion of loan to such lending institutions. But we were the secret heroes of such economic success story, and we are still continuing with our sacrifices. Let me give you an example from our holding. We bought Etikrom in Elazığ. There were many other holding owners who had more capital than us, and the company that we bought was unoperational. And without hesitation, with the blind eyes, we went to that region, we reorganized the mines, we restructured the mines once again, and we totally changed this facility. And when we spoke about such success stories, no bank believed in us, and we indeed try to show the success of the Turkish people to the foreign countries. And I mean, such success stories were also replicated in Kazakhstan, in Russia, in Switzerland. We bought bankrupt companies, and one of those bankrupt companies was converted to the number 4 biggest company in its sector. During the times of the sacrifices, we are doing our best. But if we want to do something better, then the government and the decision makers should understand their position and should help the private sector and the banks, which are in a swamp of $260 billion. We don't have the luxury to become an enemy to any of our neighbors or any of our trade partners. We don't have the luxury to be an enemy with the USA or with the Europe. If we can cooperate and collaborate with those trade partners, then we might reach to our targets of becoming one of the top 10 economies, maybe by 2030. Because as I see the new generation, I'm quite excited and I am ready to share my experience and knowledge with the new generation. And in order to do that, we are organizing trainings, seminars at the universities, and internships. In a nutshell, I can assure you that we are sacrificing our best. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Yüksel. You pointed out to an important topic, the sacrifices that we can do on the individual basis or the renunciation that we can do on the individual basis. If we want those sacrifices to yield its results and if we want those sacrifices to be sustainable, then each stakeholder should do the same. The bureaucracy and the state should also make the same sacrifices. We cannot say that nothing is being done. This is my personal opinion because the precautions that have been taken so far is aiming to revitalize the economy with the disciplined financial budget. And I believe banking sector is also positively affected by such precautions. So on one side, the public side is also making some sacrifices, making some renunciations. So if you can indeed work on those precautions on the societal level for the common good, then we will receive the results that we are seeking for. And rather than embracing the culture of conflict with a realistic perspective, we should follow a policy based on the culture of consensus. Because with the culture of consensus, the conflicts will be softened. Of course, each country might have different aims and ambitions in their foreign policies, but there should be a balance between your foreign policy targets and your capabilities in your foreign policies. Other than that, your targets will not be realized and it will even intrigue new conflicts. So as a result, as we are preserving our macroeconomic superiorities and positivities, we should be able to do them in the long term. I believe in terms of the public debt to GDP ratio, Turkey is not good. Current account deficit was one of the most problematic issues for Turkey, but as the economic growth reduced and as the commodity prices decreased, there was an improvement in the current account deficit of Turkey as well. So when we think about the tools and assets of the public side for revitalizing the economy, we shouldn't be demotivated so much. Okay, the credit ratings were quite important, so we missed the train, but we have to work on reversing those credit rates. I mean, this country received foreign direct investments with a groundbreaking record in the times when our credit ratings were so low, because our country has a story and we have to write the story of the Turkish economy from scratch. And in that story, we should also perform some reforms. And in that sense, during such extraordinary times, we might rehabilitate the system, and maybe for the mid and long term, we might do the right thing. Mr. Jam made a differentiation between renunciation and also the sacrifice, and he would like to say something about the renunciation and sacrifice with your permission. When I see the title of this session, I just looked up on the Turkish dictionary whether there is a difference between renunciation or sacrifice.
But when it comes to compromise or sacrifice, the definition is bearing troubles and difficulties for the sake of somebody else. My conscience is not really clear about renunciation or waivers because we already have ongoing struggles in order to claim rights in this difficult environment. So why would I willingly give up on my rights in this environment? This is why I do not really confer with this term. But if you say sacrifice or compromise, that sounds really better to me. Probably I could delay and postpone some of my wishes. Maybe I should compromise my living standards, not just for myself, but for the society. Let's think about companies and how they can do it. The first thing they could do would be to throttle their investments. But rather than that, maybe they could take a different route because investments are a driving force. I am building on what Adnan has said. The story of Turkey is really exciting. If you ask me, it was exciting especially for the youngsters. My son and his friends, when I take a look at them, are really walking and marching forward with strong will in order to regain that wealthy, prosperous, and peaceful environment which we enjoyed. If you don't see that in your children, in your offspring, you should fire them up. If in order to achieve that, maybe we will have to give up on some of our turnover this year, it's totally worth it. We can compromise that much. Without further ado, well, I have this habit that came from my time in civil aviation. I have this habit of keeping checklists. If you are asking for compromise, the term I would like to use rather than renunciation, I think we should be able to answer a few questions. First of all, we should be able to describe why we have to compromise. Then you can find allies for yourself. I mean, in this room, would it be a great picture if on the left of the room we would have those who are willing to compromise, and on the right we have people totally not willing to compromise for the goodwill of the nation? Then you need to understand and be able to describe how this compromise is going to take place. And finally, I believe the period of compromise is really important. asking for constant compromises will not be really an exciting thing to do, because you are asking people to bear some trouble. They wouldn't be willing to do it for a prolonged period of time. If I ask for that, also one thing I have to do would be to share my own claim of the burden. I should be compromising too if I ask you to compromise. Now, I will go to the micro level. Thinking like a company manager, I believe my compromises will have a direct impact on the clients, on the customers. So I want that impact to be positive. Well, maybe I am going to compromise my profit, my dividends, but I will still have to be able to provide and generate benefit for my client base. In a transparent environment of discussion, decisions can be made in a robust manner so that we can decide which institutions and which parties are going to compromise from what. In that environment, I would probably see some results. Thank you. We are a little bit beyond the time allocated to us, but I am wondering about the thoughts of Yüksel, especially about business initiatives. What are you focusing on recently in this environment? As a matter of fact, we are dealing with some nice acquisitions which can enliven the economy, but as the country is undergoing tough times for the last 3 to 4 years, it's not so easy. Back in the day, we would grow on our self-capital, but once we came to the point of global growth, things changed fundamentally. For example, we realized that Turkish banks had difficulty gaining funds abroad. So, thinking on this situation, we transmitted a mandate to JP Morgan. We told them we were going to sell 35% of Yieldport Holding, and the money that we were going to acquire would fuel our growth. That was an idea which could push us forward to becoming one of the top 10 maritime operating countries of the world. When I talked about this in London back then, nobody took me seriously, but it was an advantage actually, because Turks like me, when they speak pretentiously abroad, people shrug off their claims. They don't take us seriously, but we usually prove them wrong by flying under the radar usually. So we acquired a port that was bankrupt in 1999, and right now we are the 15th largest container operator of the world. This is a great achievement because even gaining the permissions takes 3 to 5 years in Turkey. But we achieved that. While doing that, we had the June election, then we had the election in November. We had 40 investors invited, 10 of them entered the data room, but currently data room does not have any investors. Yieldport attracted 20 investors, by the way. But as our greatest objective was to acquire one of the largest port operation companies of the world, we eventually convinced the sellers. We started a tender process and won it. Last year, we had the pre-agreement signed. Then there was the surprise of Trump's rise, and one of the company officials just gave up on the idea of selling their company. Then we took 3 months of lobbying. We have been working night and day without even sleeping enough. But at the level of financing, we eventually convinced people, the investors. We convinced them to be a shareholder in the asset that we are going to acquire. We convinced them that we would be there for them if they were there for us at that time. So within these last 3 to 4 years, we have been motivated with this acquisition. The most outstanding characteristic of my holding, Yıldırım Holding, is that we have always sustained our investments at bad times. Since the recession of '94, we have seen a lot of recessions. And as an apolitic firm, we are one of the fastest growing firms in Turkey. I should note and highlight that when it comes to compromise and renunciation, we do our part. For example, recently our government has started a process of employment incentives. Well, we do it without even requiring incentives. We don't take it to a showdown level. I still have lots of port projects waiting the approval of the ministry. And I am really crying my heart out to make an investment. I am not able to employ people only because I can't get approval. In Çanakkale, for example, I have a 5 billion project, but I'm still awaiting the approvals and permits. General Electric has already partnered with us. They are going to claim 10% of the partnerships for the first time. In Turkey, General Electric is going to be a partner to a Thermix power plant because it is going to be COP21 compliant, and GE trusts this investment. Even this investment in these really bad days, we are unable to promote it because the ministry is still not handing out the approval due to various reasons, like the landfill that we are going to deposit on the shore, etc. We are investing in other areas like ports and mining activities too. We are a company that actually loves Turkey, and there are hundreds of other businessmen like me, like my company and like my group. As long as government officials just pave the way for us, employment is not really going to be a problem. The solution is right here, in this country, in this room even. We don't even have to go abroad. So, as a group, I can say that we have always been compromising in terms of employment, in terms of investment and foreign trade engagement. We are literally like ambassadors for Turkey. It's not something that we have not done so far. Other than that, let's go back to what was mentioned a while ago. Regardless of what kind of good work you do, when you are graded, they grade you by the country that you live in. For example, right now, Türkiye İş Bankası is an A+ bank in comparison with foreign banks. Garanti Bank, Akbank, They are really A+ banks too, but the country gets rated. So they are tight. They can't really unleash their potential. I think we should sit around the table and find a solution because we have these real investors in Turkey and we are also seeing these big talkers. We need to differentiate between them so as to reshape the future of this country on the basis of sound planning. I think the recession environment in Turkey could be resolved in 6 months or in 1 year at most with some dialogue. People are already ready to renounce their rights and waver and compromise. We can get back on track and we don't even have to focus on the west or east or the west exclusively. We can target the entire world. I have been to Latin America and other parts of the world. We can invest in Africa. I mean, it's a continent that is 40 to 50 years behind our country. We have seen this movie before. We can just share what we have with those countries because even USA is thinking about stepping into African nations, but they are not courageous enough. They can't enter the country alone. They want partnerships. Spanish, for example, they want to penetrate the Eastern African continent in Kenya and Tanzania. We are right now examining possibilities in Latin America with construction companies, etc. I mean, the opportunity is there. Latin America is quite similar to our social structure. So probably it is time we transferred the know-how we gathered in the vicinity of our country to other geographical regions around the world. I believe if this can be done, Turkey can generate global firms which can be seen in top 5 or top 10. Well, there is lots of things to say, I know that, but in the end I can say that my group is ready to whatever it is expected from us. I would like to, by the way, congratulate Mr. Adnan as a member of the business world because İş Bankası and other large banks of Turkey have been also compromising a lot in order to support us. Although Turkish economy looks like it is about to collapse, they do keep it afloat. Without banks, I mean millions of companies right now would fall away. But they keep us from falling. They keep us alive, so hopefully we will return the favor by making this country fly once again. Thank you for listening.
Teşekkür ederiz. Bankacılar pek
Thank you very much. Bankers are not indeed accustomed to be praised. I hope this will not have a negative impact on me because we are much more, ready and accustomed to be criticized. Of course, although we make huge accomplishments, we accomplish huge things, but once you make a small mistake, then your reputation will be negatively affected. But of course, there is no need for demotivation, and we will do our best. Our time is up, but Mr. Cem, do you have any example? Based on the example of Mr. Yüksel, I would like to share a couple of examples with you. Anadolu Group. Let me give you a couple of examples from the Anadolu Group, because the example of Mr. Yüksel is quite important. If we only focus on renunciation and sacrifice, then we will not be able to make and take our actions. And we want to rewrite the Turkish story from the scratch. That's what we want. And we want to make and take fast decisions so that we can have fast results. Of course, this is a time of transition. Hopefully, the future will be much more peaceful and with higher welfare. But in the time of transition, a way out for the companies was the international investments. Anadolu Group initiated to invest in the Middle Asia, and we took a huge step in Pakistan. And Coca-Cola indeed became the #1 beverage in that market, and in time 300 or 400 millions of dollars were invested. And this is, by the way, not all about the money. If we didn't expand our business to other countries, then we would not be able to export our engineers and our experts. But right now, our engineers are indeed quite active in those markets. Let me give you another example, Pegasus. Pegasus established an airlines in Kazakhstan, Air Manas. With thanks to Kazakhstan, the connections between China and Russia will indeed seed the opportunities for establishing a bigger airline structure and network in the future. Such kind of initiatives are proactive initiatives, and entrepreneurship is not only about establishing your own business, but you should at the same time realize your dreams in the company that you are working for. I believe this time we should focus to the globe, and we should extend our portfolio of businesses so that we can be successful at those times. And once again, I would like to thank you for giving us such an opportunity. Thank you very much.
Sanıyorum bu başlık altında
I believe under this title, we were able to convey a couple of messages. First of all, we had a chance to speak about the possible solutions in order to overcome such harsh times. And we said that without indeed damaging on the weak ones, we should indeed be more aggressive, and we should expand our business to the foreign markets, and we should preserve our aims with regards to that. And in order to do that, we should do our business the best we can. Thank you very much.